Guys, welcome to part 4 of our library management system. So now let's create a library manager header file. So again, we go to File, New, File, click on Zip header, click on Go, Next. We're going to call it on the library manager. Then we'll click on the path. It's still under our library management system. Click on Save. You want to replace it, and then select all. Then we finish. So this is our library manager header file. So this is the library manager for our library management system. This file declares as the brain of the library system. It manages the collection of books and magazines like a real librarian. So we still have our header cards, if not defined. Without this, you'd get a redefinition error. So now we're going to include a vector. I'll explain in a minute how you include the vector. So the purpose for this include vector, it is for storing multiple items, like a dynamic array. As you'll see in the program, we're going to have dynamic arrays. We'll also include, so it must be include memory. So the include is for smart pointers. Okay, and you'll see in the program as we go along that we're going to have smart pointers. And then we're going to have include string. It is for the std string, and also text handling. I'm also going to include our library item header file. So we're going to have our library item header file, the one we created in part 1. We're going also to include our book header file, the one we created from part 2. And we'll also include our magazine header file, which we did in part 3 of our videos. And all of these are for the classes, and they're all derived from, like the book and magazine are derived from the library header file, as we've seen before. So let's start with our class declaration. We're going to have a class called the library manager. So the purpose of this class is like a real librarian. It's going to keep track of all the books and magazines, like the whole collection. It will help us to find items using search. It will handle borrowing and returning. It saves everything to a file, like a catalog. And then it's going to load data when opening, and it's going to remember everything. This class uses composition. The whole process is called composition. It contains a collection of library items. So it's going to be a class, so we're going to call it library manager. Library manager. That's library manager. I'm gonna spell it right. So as you know that our classes will have member variables. We start with our private member variable. So we'll say private with the semicolon. So our private member variable, this can only be accessed by methods of this class. Outside code cannot touch this directly. It's usually known as encapsulation. So we're going to have items. The items are the library collection. So you must look at this as the shelf, which holds all the books and magazine. So this shelf I'm referring to it's our smart pointer. if you remember here in line 3, when I spoke about a vector, this is a dynamic vector, or the minute this vector, on this next line I'm going to put it's a dynamic array that can grow and shrink. It will work like a list, which we'll use to add items to. And then all of the items will be stored in order. We call them index, like from index 0, index 1, and so forth. So we also have a unique pointer. It's usually referred to as a smart point. So it's going to point to a library item, whether it's a book or a magazine, and it will automatically delete the object when no longer needed. And another purpose is going to help to prevent memory leaks, and only one owner can have the pointer at a time. So it's a unique point. The purpose of a unique pointer is for safety, so no manual delete is needed after you write. Okay, let me just put this whole thing in writing so you can understand. This is going to be an STD. So it's a vector. And then within our vector, we're going to have this smart pointer. So it's STD unique pointer for our library items. Library item. Then items. So next we're going to have data file. So this data file will be the name of the file for permanent storage. It is type of a constant, so it's a string that's a constant, so it cannot be changed. And then the value of it will be a data file, or going to include a library text file. We'll name it a library data text file. The purpose of this text file is where all library data is saved between program runs. When you add book, they get saved to this file. When you reopen the program, the data loads from this file. So let's write this file. It's going to be a const std string. Let's name it data file, and then this data file is going to be, let's name it library data.txt. So since it's a text file, so it's .txt. Remember to close the code. So now we're going to add something called the private helper method. These are for internal use only, not meant to be called by outside code. So the first one we're going to have is called load data. It retrieves saved data from file into memory. It's called automatically by the constructor when program starts. It's private because users shouldn't call this directly. So what it does is going to open the library data.txt file. It will read each line, create book or magazine object, and it's going to add them to the item vector. So it's an unreturning, so it's going to be void load data. It's a method. Then we're going to close. This second one is going to be a save data. So what save data will do, it will write current collection to file. It's called automatically by the destructor when program ends. It's private because saving happens automatically. So what this one will do is going to open it by the data.txt. It's going to create or overwrite it. It tries each item information to a line, and then it's going to close the file. So it's a void save data method or function. Okay, now let's look at our public member variables. So we start by looking public constructor and destructor. These are called automatically when object is created or destroyed. So we're going to start with our constructor. We'll name it the library manager. The purpose is create a new library manager. It's called when library manager is written in our main method. So what it does is it's going to call our load data function to restore previous library date. It's going to ensure that you see your book from your last session. So we're going to have library manager. It's a method. And then next, okay, this line 18 we call it a constructor. So next in line we're going to have something we call a destructor. So the purpose of a destructor is cleans up the library manager. It cleans up after the library manager is destroyed. And when it's called, the program ends or object goes out of scope. So what that's going to save, it's going to call the save data method to permanently store all changes. And it ensures your edit books aren't lost, and automatically deletes all items thanks to this unique point. So you use a tilde first, and then it's going to have the same name as the constructor, which is different. It's going to have a tilde. This library, so this library manager. It's also a method, so use a round bracket and then close it. Now we're going to have our public methods, the library services. So these are what users of the class can call anytime where this program runs. So the first method we're going to have is called an add item. So the purpose of this add item, it adds a new item, whether it's a book or a magazine, to the library. The parameters are going to be item, a smart pointer to the new library item, and then you're going to see how we're going to use it as we go along in our program. But then the question is, why are we using a smart unique point? The manager takes ownership of the item. The caller gives away ownership. Manager will delete it later. So it's going to be a void add item std unique. So it's going to be unique. Use a unique pointer, remember, to vector. So within we're going to have a library item. Library item. We said it's going to be an item. Then we close. So our second public method is a search item. So with the search item, the purpose is going to find an item by its unique ID. The parameters are going to be ID, the unique identifier to search for. It's going to return pointer to the item if found, null pointer if not found. It's also going to be const. This method does not modify the library. It just looks over it. So again, let's have the library item. Library item. It's a pointer, so let's put an asterisk. We said we're going to call it search item. Then it's const std string to reference ID const semicolon. And then our next method is going to be a borrow item. The purpose of this borrow item, it borrows or checks out an item from the library. It's also going to use a parameter of ID. So it's ID of the item to borrow. It returns true if successful, false if the item doesn't exist or is already borrowed. But then the rules of this borrow item, it must exist in library. Item must be available or not already borrowed. You cannot borrow the same item twice. If you borrow a book or a magazine from the library, you cannot borrow it again. So since it has two outcomes, it's a bool data type. We'll call it borrow item. It's a const std string. It's a reference ID. Our next method is going to be the return item. So the purpose of this next one, the return item, it returns or checks in a borrowed item, whether it's a book or or a magazine. The parameters, okay, in its ID, since we use ID to borrow it, so we're going to use an ID to return this item. Again, it's boolean, it's going to be true if the process is successful, false otherwise. So again, the business rules are item must exist in library. So this must exist within the records. Item must be carefully borrowed. You cannot return an item that's already available. So again, it's a bool. Okay, wait, next line. Bool. Return item. Return item. It's a const. std string. Reference ID. Another method is called display item. So the purpose of this next display item, it prints all items in the library to the console. It's again a const, and this method does not modify the library. It just displays the contents in the library. So it's going to be a void display all items. So it said it's a const. So guys, they are done with the library manager header file. And then remember we have our end of header card, the end if. So please like this video, share it, subscribe to this channel, and then check out part 5 of our library management system as we continue. Thank you, bye.